Okay, so I'm going to do a video on Aaron's breastplate. Doing some reading and meditation with the weekly Torah reading and feeding for Thursday, and kind of Spirit was speaking to me, so I thought I'd kind of dive into this and kind of uncovered a lot of knowledge, and just want to share it with everyone who has ears to hear and eyes to see. So we're going to be looking at Exodus chapter 28, 17 to 21, and Exodus chapter 39, 10 to 13. This is specifically speaking about the gems and the order in which they're placed on the breastplate. And as we're going to see, there's some additional information that comes to light and really gives a lot of resounding information that can be sure of if you're able to see and hear. Exodus, let me just get my bearings right here. Exodus 28, and go down to 17 here. So just going to read along here. And thou shalt set in it stones, settings of stones, even 4 rows of stones shall be a sardius, a topaz, and a carbuncle. This shall be the first row. So one of the things I was looking at as I was going over this section, I was actually going over the Exodus 39, 10 to 13, but it's the same in essence, is the actual orders of the gems. Because this image on the left is one that I'm sure lots of people have seen. It's probably one of the most kind of classic images depicting the whole wardrobe of the high priest. But one thing that kind of bothered me was the gems don't seem to line up compared to what they should be according to the scripture. And when I looked at all kinds of different videos, the videos too, but a lot of the images out there, they don't add up. So I went and started piecing together all these gems. So that's where I got all these gems on the right hand side. And there's a very different image that kind of emerges. So as you see here, you got in the first row, we got the sardius, the topaz, and the carbuncle. This shall be the first row. Then we get to the second row, got an emerald, a sapphire, and a diamond. Third row, we got a ligure. Some people call it a jacinth. Then there's the agate. Then we have amethyst. Make up the third row. And on the fourth row, we have beryl, onyx, and jasper. Now, this wasn't a really bad depiction in some senses. It's a little off in the sense of the gems, but I mean everything is laid in gold, so that's all accurate, and from what I can tell, the rest of the image is correct. But it kind of begs the question, if they don't have these in the right order, what's the reasoning for that? I mean, it must be to conceal something of great importance that they don't want us to see. Just before we continue on, though, I'm going to just go to the second portion, Exodus 39, and then 10 to 13 here. So this was the portion I was reading that I kind of came to this insight here. And they set it in 4 rows of stones. The first row was a sardius, a topaz, and a carbuncle. And the second row, an emerald, a sapphire, and a diamond. And the third row, a ligure, an agate, an amethyst. And the fourth row, beryl, onyx, and jasper. And they were enclosed in ounces of gold in their enclosings. So again, I have confirmation that this is correct. This follows exactly what the scripture says. Now, I have no idea where people are getting this interpretation of the gems, because all I did to get these gems was literally go and do a Google search for each of these gems. I just have them in a file browser right now, so I mean, if I stretch it, they just kind of flow. But if I resize it just right, I get the 3x3, and they line up the way they should. Nothing too fancy about this, pretty easy to figure out if you take the time. So the other thing that happens here is when you start looking at this more accurate picture of the breastplate, as I was saying, it kind of asks or makes you ask the question, why is this not depicted correctly? One thing I was meditating on this for a bit and just looking at it and what differed and what kind of patterns you could kind of pick up from this coming from the scriptures. And the first thing that kind of came to mind is when you look at the breastplate, you need to keep in mind that it hangs from the shoulders. And these shoulders are also below the head. So the first thing I kind of noticed is with this piece, you kind of have the two shoulders, the head, and the breastplate. Now the head would be representative of the high priest, so I mean that is Jah Rastafari. I mean, that is the most high priest. There's no mistaking who the head is. If you don't know, that's you need to know that first. Get your orientation correct. Then you have the two shoulders being fastened with the onyx stones, and I mean, this to my mind is essentially the two extreme faults of man. They didn't want to do it Jah's way, so they tried going left, and when that didn't work, they tried going right, and ultimately they both fell because they've fallen from the head. They're no longer in those graces. Now the shoulders is really where the burden rests on the high priest. He doesn't let him fall any further than that. But what happens is if you go past that line, you cross over from the physical, and you pass into that judgment phase where you're judged for eternity. And that's where the breastplate kind of comes in here. There's three main perspectives that I could see from this kind of interpretation of things. The first is when we look at the breastplate, I'm going to use Genesis 49:3-27 as kind of my guide and chart for how to explain this. But essentially, all of these 12 stones in order are representative of both the names of the children of Israel, as well as the 12 ages of man. And there's some similarities, and there's also some differences when you look at it. I'm just going to pull up Genesis 49 so we can kind of go through this a little bit. I'm not necessarily going to read it in full detail. You guys can do that on your own. Check it out for yourself. So just going through the list, the names of the sons in order that also go from Exodus 28:21, they go in order with the gems. So we have Reuben with the sardius, Simeon with the topaz, Levi with the carbuncle, Jacob with the emerald, or Yaakov, Yehuda with the sapphire, Zebulun with the diamond, Issachar with the ligure, Dan with the agate, Gad with the amethyst, Asher with the beryl, Naphtali with the onyx, and Yosef with the jasper. Now, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail, but that's just the names going with these. And my interpretation of what these ages are essentially are kind of the periods within history. And you're going to kind of see this revealed through the scripture as well in a moment here. So Reuben, I'm just going from my notes. He's the firstborn. He's Jah's might at the beginning of his strength, the excellency of his dignity, and the excellency of his power. I mean, this is when they're first created and everything is good. No sin is entered in at this point. They're in good standing. This period doesn't last very long, though. Adam and Eve fall to temptation, right? And then comes Simeon and Levi. I mean, they're brethren, the instruments of cruelty in their habitations. this is because uh, essentially with the fall to temptation, they thought they could be like unto God, have that golden aura about them and to fill them as if they were Jah. Then you have carbuncle, signifying the slaughtering of Cain and of Abel by Cain. So you got the blood being spilt, and for what? Because he felt, put out and abhorred or lessened than Abel, and for nothing that Abel did, just what Cain didn't do. So he wrongly committed evil for something that he associated blame to someone who was blameless in that sense. So that's where it says these two were our brethren and instruments of cruelty in their habitations. They allowed that evil into their house, because a habitation is really, I didn't really look at it before, but it's not coming from Baith in this sense, but it's still a dwelling place. Maybe not a temple because it's not right for God, but it's their habitation in that same sense. But they invite that evil in, so they're not seen as good ages. And it even re-emphasizes that here. Oh, my soul, come not into their secret, unto their assembly. Mine honor, be not thou united. For in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they digged down a wall. So there's clear emphasis there. Cursed be their anger, for it was fierce, and their wrath, for it was cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. Yehuda, thou art he whom thy brethren shall praise, and thy hand shall be in the neck of thy enemies. Thy father's children shall bow down before thee. Looks like I skipped ahead just a little bit. Jacob's kind of hidden in here. Essentially he's saying they're all cursed, and because of that, he's going to scatter them throughout Israel. And that really comes down to this fourth emerald where we have Jacob. Now this is green again, and I don't think that's any coincidence, because green is always associated pro-life, the heart, the living, the growth, all the good things. So this was a good, a good first step to, it wasn't back up here, but it was kind of getting back in alignment. Now, when it comes back to getting in that alignment, they're not made perfect at this point yet. And along comes Yehuda, and this is representative of the Ben Ha-Elohim, Nazretu Yeshua HaMoshiach, or Jesus Christos, or Jesus Christ, however you know the... And there's a pretty significant portion of text here really pointing this out. Thou art he, really should be capital He, but he whom thy brethren shall praise. Thy hand shall be in the neck of thy enemies. Thy father's children shall bow down before thee. It's pretty clear who this is, to my mind anyways. Decide for yourselves. Yehuda is a lion's whelp. So who's the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah? And this is his whelp, his youngin. From the prey, my son. And if it's not really clear right here, it should be, you should be hitting the nail at this point. Thou art gone up. It's only one who's risen, who's gone up. He stooped down, he couched as a lion, and as an old lion, who rose him up? He sat peacefully, even though he was being persecuted for all kinds of reasons, even though all kinds of wicked and evil were being perpetrated. Who rose him up? Do you know? Do you know the Son? Do you know the Father? And continuing, we got, the scepter shall not depart from Yehuda, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh come. So he's clearly saying, this is the tree of life that will be planted, that is not going anywhere. It doesn't matter what you think or what you say. It is what it is. You got to deal with it. Adjust your sight to him, and everything will be made clear. And unto him shall the gathering of the people be. I I don't want to. Yeah, we'll just stop there. Let you figure that out for yourself. Binding the foal into the vine, and his ass's colt unto the choice vine. He washed his garments in wine, in the blood, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. He's made pure through the blood. There's no question. His eyes shall be red with wine, and his teeth white with milk. Yeah. There's a lot of little hints. I mean, what you're able to see, that's probably just dependent on where you are in your walk, but your tribe. Let you kind of fill in the blanks for yourself. There's a lot of good meditation that you're going to see in here. Hopefully this is kind of really coming out for you. You can see the reflections of light, of jaw light. So we're going to continue. So that's the first 5. Now, Zebulun is, all who dwell at the haven of the sea. And he shall be for an haven of ships, and his border shall be unto Zidon. So this is kind of interesting, and there's a couple of things I took away from this. It says, he shall dwell at the haven of the sea. The one thing that comes to mind is the Psalm 93, I think it is. Let me just pull this up real quick here. Yeah. So here in Psalm 93, verse 4, you got Yahweh on high is mightier than the noise of many waters, yea, than the mighty waves of the sea. So it's really isolating and telling us that, hey, the seas are these big bodies of people who have of the wicked and evil, we call Babylon, that's risen up against the Most High. So that's what it means when it says the seas. Now, go back to this. So when it says, he shall dwell at the haven of the sea, this is basically saying this period of people, they're gonna be right at the brink of the sea, because after them, the sea is going to explode and try and lift itself up. And he shall be for a haven of ships. So what this is saying is the works and doings of this generation are going to be ultimately the ships, just like Noah built, that are going to save the inhabitants of the earth. Might not be collected 2 by 2 in that same sense, but it's, the spirit resides in the ship, the vessel. So there's that kind of connection going along there. And if you look at a lot of the people that lived in this period, this is right after Yeshua's lifetime, there is a lot of people that became martyrs in this period of time. And that's kind of, they did a lot of good works, and towards the end you start getting into the next phase where a lot of the martyrs at the end of this age really came about. And they tried to silence this, and they wanted to cut it off so they could bring about their own evil ideas and ideals. And his border shall be unto Zidon. So Zidon is, I think, just a name that is given to kind of represent that sea. But it's kind of interesting too, because when you look at it, it kind of is Zion with a D in the middle, kind of D representing the death. And it's like, once the death is removed, then you'll clearly see that it's Zion. Just my own kind of thoughts on that. Read into it what you like, what you're able to, and rebuke and reprove me if you have something to say. Show some proof for reasoning. Don't just say, "Oh, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong." Show what you know to be true. Love to hear it. So then we go into Issachar, and this is where you kind of get out of this generation that will witness the lifetime. Maybe just before we go on, I just want to point something out real quick, is this generation of Jacob, they were made more right than these first 2, Simeon and Levi, but they weren't quite right yet. They hadn't really received the word. Then the word came and manifested itself that we could all see and hear. More importantly, hear firsthand, right from the source. So while this isn't quite right, this is made more right. And these are the ones that had the pure sight and knowledge. And you can see the reflection of those qualities within the gems themselves. They kind of give off these qualities. And kind of continue along with this is like what I was talking about before with the age of a lot of works, the apostles doing their works and spreading the message, and then a lot of these martyrdoms kind of at the end of this age transitioning into the age of Issachar. Now, Issachar, the first thing you notice in that kind of sense, or that light, is you got this kind of blood red again, and it's like, yep, there's more blood coming. And I mean, you look at the history, it lines up perfectly. Because they started it with the martyrs, but then it wasn't just good enough to get the people that were spreading it. They had to instill fear in everyone to keep them from ever going back that way. They were cutting them off for good. It's like that great circumcision, right? So Issachar, they say, is a strong ass couching down between two burdens. So he's kind of caught in tough spot, he's caught between two rocks. He has to decide which way he's going to go. As he saw that the rest was good, he saw all these works, he's like, he didn't see before, he didn't see the lifetime, but he saw all the good works and heard of all the good works. There's a couple generations removed now. And in the land that it was pleasant. So, again, just talking, they were able to see and sight all those things clearly. They had that clear vision. The waters hadn't been muddied yet, or the well of water, and bowed his shoulder to bear. So what they're saying here is he had the choice of both, and bowed the shoulder, and suffered even more iniquity, and became a servant unto tribute. So, tribute could be taken, they use mass here. A burden is causing to faint, or a tax in the form of forced labor, discomfited, levy, taskmaster. What I'm reading into this is they basically sold out, they traded the things of spiritual, that were of spiritual value, for the things that had worldly value. Instead of lifting themselves up to the Most High and the truth and the Spirit, they lowered their shoulders to the burdens of the sin of the world. So this is kind of that mark back off. It's like, at this point, humanity had a nice choice. It was like everything was in a good point, and they fell back, they started to slip and fall back into the evil ways that plagued them beforehand. Interestingly enough, when they were taking blood in the early days, it's not quite as deep a red as that. Maybe there's not quite as much bloodshed, but they're heading back in that direction, especially when you go from being nice and clear like this back to the bloody, blood guiltiness, Going on to agate, the next stone here. There's a couple things of interest to point out with this. Just like this ligure has the kind of element of the blood coming back in and seeping in. Here, the agate, we have a couple interesting qualities. First off, out of all these stones, most of them people would kind of consider precious stones. They extrude light, and they're kind of more pretty, you might say, or I don't know, whatever words you want to use. The agate, though, along with the onyx and jasper, are kind of set apart in the sense that they don't allow light through. They're a precious gem. You could call them a gemstone, but they're not like really a precious gem, or you wouldn't call them a precious gem. You'd call them a gemstone, a gem, but you wouldn't really call them precious. They don't have those same kind of qualities. But it also looks a lot like a side section of a tree. It's being cut out of a tree. But it's definitely not like there are others. Who does this sound like? The 12 tribes of Israel, do the math. But if you can see that and you can cite that, there's something different about these people. Now, just continuing on here in the scripture, it says Dan, who's attributed to agate, this period of time, shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Kind of sounds good. But then you keep going, and then you get right into it, and it says, Dan shall be a serpent by the way, an adder in the path that biteth the horse heels, so that his rider shall fall backward. And there's a couple things I kind of took away from this. Is Dan is going to ultimately turn on his people. He's going to see there's more profit in taking and exploiting his people than doing the good. So kind of the same falling along Issachar. I mean, they're still doing the blood. Maybe the blood slowed up a little bit because they kind of got their way at this point. But I mean, now you got people selling out people, and this is where exploitation is really coming in. I mean, there's all kinds of signs. You just go back and look through history. I mean, you'll see the signs through the ages. It's pretty easy to see. It's like looking at the rings in a tree, really. And I think there's kind of significance to that point too, because this is the 8th stone. The 7th stone, you should see exactly what Yeshua came to talk about and preach on. By the 8th, there's no mistaking it. I mean, really, there's no way you can look about it unless you're purposely just being ignorant or, going against God, against Jah, the Most High. So there's all kinds of influences into that. Now, the other piece here is, in addition to kind of profiting off of holding back his people, this is, can see like when slavery, this is, I think to my mind, the beginning of slavery. Like a lot of the bloodshed stopped. There's still a lot of cruelty going on. Maybe not as much bloodshed. They just sought to really profit off these people. Instead of killing them, it was more profitable to use them. And I mean, you still see this going on nowadays. But, I mean, where's all these racist issues coming from? They're trying to keep people in this lesser light, so they can't really see the true workings of everything that is. And these are the people. It also says, "I have waited for thy salvation, O Yeshua," or Yahweh. So these are the good people, and they haven't come to grips in this period of time yet. There's some people are doing the good things, but there's also others that are selling themselves out. They've been corrupted from the ways of Issachar. So we're going to keep going. We'll come back. There's some more things we'll touch on in a little bit, just in a different light, so it makes more sense. So continuing with the ages, we go to the 9th gem, being Gad, and rightly so it says here, Gad, a troop shall overcome him, and that's really where Gad comes from. That's, including his tribe, to crowd upon, to attack, invade, and overcome. So I mean, that's really what Gad is. There's no overcoming about this. And he shall overcome at the last. And what that really means is, these are, this is the house of, if there was any doubt, this is the house of the children of Israel. And they've started to fall again and become corrupt, not being perfect. We're all sinners. There's no mistake in that. Then with Gad, this is really all of that being overcome, and they're really taking away the spiritual, the roots that were left at this point. They're really digging deep to make sure we get every last bit. To the world's view, is like that which is holy and spiritual is like a tumor. They have to get it out. You can't risk any of that because it will destroy them. It's already been prophesied. And he shall overcome at the last. So even though they're taken out at this point, fear not, because it's giving you hope right here at the same sense. Even you will overcome. So this is for all those who are, keeping the faith and keeping the trot and living Yahweh, truth and life, and were overcome, and they will get the last laugh. To make no mistake, it's right there in the scripture. Now, out of Asher, which is the next stone, I got a little ahead of myself. Just touch on the color here a little bit. So the color really comes back to, for Gad here, this is purple is usually associated with royalty. And this is kind of the period of age where man starts to think of himself as being royal and all entitled. we've really got everything. We cut off this Yeshua nonsense in their opinion. We've paid the debts with the blood. We've paid you've done the blood sacrifice to their evil gods. They've cut off the spiritual things at this point. Everything is going their way. They're starting to smile. They're like, oh, who needs God is what they're thinking. So there's that reflection of their entitlement, of they're thinking themselves to be royalty when they are not. There's also now, you get into this bright yellow, this more yellow like the sun, and continuing on that, if you think yourself entitled, it's not long before you start thinking yourself a god. So they think they're sun gods, they're bright and powerful like the sun. You get all kinds. This is kind of tying into the Illuminati nonsense and all the sun worship and all its forms and yada yada. I won't go on with that, but and this correlates to Asher, and his bread shall be fat, and he shall yield royal dainties. So at this point, it's really saying it's like everything that these evil people in this period have put forward, it's going to be made fat. Their words are going to come back and be made as fat bread, and he shall yield royal dainty. He's going to have all of the good things he wants. He's not going to spare for anything. It's like whatever these evil people want, they're going to pursue relentlessly at that. And at this point, after these 9, you get to the 10th, and you get to another one of these stones that's not like the others. There's no light that permeates this one. It is black. They've hit that point. It's like the sin is like an all-time high. There's no mistaking the sin at this point. It should be perfectly clear for everyone. And this correlates to Naphtali. A hind let loose, he giveth goodly words. So the hind let loose, they spared no boundaries at this point. And at this point, it's like whatever's left, it's like whatever things they were maybe not privy to really getting access to, they found ways to circumvent and undermine and exploit, and every one of those words. You won't go into details, but you can kind of piece this together if you take the time to think on it. Then we get to color is obviously reflective of sin. Just before we move on, Yosef is the last stone, and it's related to jasper, and it's another one of these stones where it's thick. There's no light coming through it. And it really is representative of the blood. It's one thing to be a sinner. It's another thing to have blood guiltiness on your hands. And at this point, the blood guiltiness is so thick, there's no light permeating through. It's like, it's about as bad as it can possibly get. It's about as pure evil as you can get, is essentially what it is. It's complete opposite of the pure goodness that we started in. And this is that time we're living in now. You look all around the world. I don't think it was all that long ago we were in this age of the sinners, of the blackness. This, to my mind, is the period when Kedemawi Haile Selassie came and settled the throne. Took the throne and revealed himself and loosened the 7 seals. This is that period afterwards, when the blood guiltiness is allowed to continue to reach that given point of that fullness, because once there's that fullness, that's the completion of the ages, and the judgment will begin, is what I'm taking away from this. Now the other thing with Joseph, going back to the scriptures here in Genesis 49:22, Joseph is a fruitful bow. So although there's this kind of view of the blood guiltiness of the ages of man, it's also saying this is really the fullness, the full ripeness of that fruit, of that age, of their works, even a fruitful bow by a well, they were well nourished with everything they needed to thrive, whose branches run over the wall. They exceeded all the boundaries they were given. So really, it makes a really clear picture. The archers have sorely grieved him and shot at him and hated him. They're locked away all safely behind all their deceits and illusions from those who know the truth. And even though the truth speakers speak on the truth, a lot of times it just doesn't break through. But I mean, that's changing. You can see it in the days and times that we're living in. Don't have to look too far. You just need to know what you're looking for in truth and in spirit. Then you get to just continuing here. But his bow abode in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong, and by the hands of the mighty Elohim of Yaakov, from thence is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. I mean, if you couldn't see the light in the darkness, you're going to definitely start to see the light with all the blood guiltiness going on. I mean, if it wasn't apparent then, you're going to definitely start to see it now. You have to, because if you don't, you're going to get to the end and realize you really didn't know what you needed to know. You weren't wise enough to the things Jah has spoke on. Got a couple more verses to go here, just to kind of tie this up, and then we'll look at some of these other perspectives. Even by Elohim of thy father, who shall health thee, and by the Almighty, who shall bless thee with the blessings of heaven, of Shimayin above, the blessings of the deep that lieth under, and the blessings of the breasts and of the womb. There's a lot of, the blessings from above, from the Father. If for those who have their head, the blessings of the breast, of the heart, of the will, for those who have written the precepts on the table of their heart, and of the womb, who work and manifest good works. The blessings of thy father have prevailed. The blessings of thy progenitors, all the generations that came before us to reach this point. Without their works, I mean, we wouldn't have anything to really go off of. We would have been swept up in this age. But the roots is what stuck throughout all these dark times, even the darkest of times, really. Jah is that piercing light that shines in the darkness, or more accurately, through the darkness. The blessings of thy father have prevailed, and the blessings of my progenitors, unto the utmost bound of the everlasting hills, and they shall be on the head of Yosef, and on the crown of the head of him that was separate from his brethren. So saying, only the people that really receive those blessings from the Father are going to be seen as separate in the sight of the Most High. And the blessings of that will be on the head of Yosef, of all those who walk with the Spirit in them. Do you have the rainbow in you? Do you carry the light of the Most High? And on the crown of the head of him, do you have that consciousness and knowledge and, to know Jah one-on-one? There's the crown of the head, it ties into that third eye, being, having that communication to the Most High through the Holy of Holies. Then we got Benjamin shall raven as a wolf in the morning. So, I mean, it's pretty clear, it should be pretty clear, Benjamin is going to bring the wrath like a wolf in the morning, and he shall devour the prey. Everyone who thinks themselves to be in his sight, aligned and right, that aren't, they're going to be done away with and devoured. It says it right here. And at night he shall divide the spoil. He's going to take and assign everything that all the spoils of the war, all the things that were taken in evil and wickedness are going to go back to those who rightly deserve it in his sight. So that really just kind of talks about just the coming of ages. And this is what, they would have been able to understand back in those times. What they wouldn't have been able to understand that we can look at nowadays is we can actually look at all these ages in human history and we can kind of map them. I'm not going to say you can necessarily map them down to the exact day, time and minute, but you can kind of get a certain sense, similar how to man tried to rename the ages like the Dark Ages and the Renaissance Age and all these kind of nonsense. I mean, they're trying to misguide the people and think it's a different time than it really is. I mean, nothing's really new under the sun. They still do it to this day. They don't want people to know when the Sabbath is. They don't want people to know when the actual transition of day to night is, or the light to the darkness. There's all those things in the changing of seasons. So that's the 12 ages of man going through. So that's the one perspective. And it's kind of a lengthy one, but you're going to see how this really plays into the other two. So the next perspective to look on this with is Jah view and judgment. Just going back to a little earlier point I made about the shoulders and pointing out how the breastplate hangs from the shoulders. You know, the burden is on the shoulders of the Most High. He holds up this judgment, even though it is painful to do. So when we cross over, we can be judged, and if we're judged in accordance with His commandment, being right, you know, He'll wash our sins away and make us right, and we're able to live forever and live with the Father. If you're not in that alignment, you might be on the left or the right alignment. You know, He's going to spit you out. You're going to go into the pit and face, the righteous judgment. So with that concept, there's really three choices. This is kind of just touching on the third perspective, and it's the three views or the three choices mankind is given. That we have our whole life, this trial. We have this trial to kind of really decide for ourselves and give our own witness and account and testimony of what is what. What be righteous, what be evil, what would be wicked. And that's really kind of these three perspectives Jah sees. So let's start with Jah's views and judgment. If you can kind of picture kind of an upside down triangle coming down to the breastplate, it's kind of like a big funnel. And when we fall over from the physical, we kind of fall into this judgment, just like going through this funnel here. And there's one slot here on the left, one slot down the middle, being aligned, and one slot on the right. You could also think of this as those who are evil, those who are righteous, and those who are wicked. Now, I didn't really prepare the scriptures for this, just kind of going from previous readings I've done, but you can go check it out. In Revelation, he talks about he's going to judge the righteous first. He's going to, doesn't mean they're without sin, but he's the one that can, he'll judge it. If you be right, he can wipe away our sins. So, within these divisions, you need to know about Jah's tabernacle and how and even with the Ark of the Covenant, and even the outfit of the holy priests are all reflections of Jah's creation and His pattern and His design. Within that, there's correlations between the Metu Neter and the tabernacle, and also the Holy of Holies, Ark of the Covenant. They all tie together, and what you'll notice is when you actually look at the full Kabbalah tree, when you have the full picture, is you kind of have these four separations, the kind of the four levels, if you will. Starting on this level, this is the physical plane of existence. This is where our bodies exist. This is where we spend our life living. Then we have the metaphysical plane, which we can also experience in this living realm, but it's not something you can necessarily see. It's the unseen, the things that must be revealed to us. Then we have the things of heaven, the supernatural things. And then we have the things that should not be, the things that are beyond the boundaries of life. This is crossed over into the plane of death, where things should be destroyed, for they have fallen of the glory of Jah. So just going back, just look on this middle column for now. This is the righteous people. So Jah has to judge. He's going to look on us and see, are you part of that tree? That's kind of the first piece. he's going to look, are you part of that tree? Have you been grafted in? I mean, there's the natural olive tree and there's the wild olive tree. You know, there's going to be people, there's lots of people that are going to be from the natural olive tree. They'll be part of that group of people. There will also be some that are part of the wild that are being grafted in, and some of the natural will be rooted out. You know, it's very clear that it's not just all or none. And the natural tree is the Most High. I mean, I won't go too much back into it, but you can go back to Judah. Yeah. Anyways, so you got to be part of. He's got to recognize you as one of his own. That's the first thing. Second thing is, in the metaphysical sense, did you really hear the word? Blue is often associated with like the blue throat chakra, or you know, with the word the tabar amar. You know, what did you hear? Did you hear rightly? You know, let he who has ears to hear, you know, hear. Then, if you heard correctly, could you cite the heavenly things? And notice how this isn't a bright yellow like the sun. It's like a deep golden hue of perfection is really what it looks like, especially when you compare it to this kind of more sun-like color. But you know, did you see the works? If you heard properly, you're going to be able to see properly. So if you can see this when you pass over, you know, Jah sees the sin. Yes, you know, there's the sin on the whiteness is kind of one way of looking at this. But there's also the other way of looking at it, and it's like, you know, Jah is the black king, the black power, you know. There's that sense of, from that which is whole, represented by the circle, the black hole being, you know, it's a reflection of the true original power, the Holy Trinity, you know. Kedamawi Aile Selassie, Jah Rastafari. So that's that kind of first alignment. I mean, those are the people that are going to be seen as righteous. There's no other way to look on it. Now, those are the people that be righteous. Then Jah says he's going to judge the people that are wicked. So that's these people on the right. You know, it's no coincidence it's on the right. They think they're right, but they're not. Is ultimately what it's saying. Here, in their physical sense, they think themselves royalty. You know, they think themselves entitled. I mean, there's a lot of people like this. This sums up the wicked people. When they see the metaphysical things of the world, they see it so clearly. They think, "Oh, it makes perfect sense to us. We know everything." You know, they have no need to hear from anyone else. Then you get up to, because of this view of the metaphysical, when they think of the heavenly things, they just see him as, oh, he's this wrathful God, you know, he's not just, he doesn't uphold himself. And this is a misconception because they didn't hear properly, because they relied on their own hearing. So ultimately when they pass over, because there's no more room found for them, you know, they come across and they're not just seen with sin on their hands, they're seen with blood guiltiness on their hands. And the scriptures are very clear that blood guiltiness will not be forgiven. It's like, you know, blood for blood. You don't really need to say much more than that. It's like, these people, there's no way they're done. Or they're getting through. It's like, they're done before they get there. Like, you didn't hear, you didn't see, and because of that, you reap the benefit or the consequences. And notice how it's all centered around purple being a combination of word and blood. You know, they put forward their word instead of his word, so they got blood And that was really the essence of why they became purple. Kind of also kind of ties back to like think like movies like Matrix, where it's like, oh, which pill do you want? You want the red pill or the blue pill? Doesn't really matter. I mean, they're fooling you either way. They see clearly through the scam because they're just dividing you from God. So that's the wicked people. They're just, cut off. Good? Definitely not. Definitely not. Now you get to these people on the left, and they are the evil people. They're not wicked. They're not going about seeking to build the kingdom of, or this dominion of Babylon. But they're also not, godly people. They're not following after the true power. They're the evil people. You could also think of them as just like the godless people, not having the true God. For them, on the physical plane, they see themselves, this isn't red as in the blood being violent, this is red as in they just see themselves as, hey, we're just like everyone else, Why is this person better than me? Why is that person worse than me? They don't understand this concept of sin. They just see, oh, you do what you want and life is all good. So their metaphysical view on things is all green and peachy. They just see, oh yeah, we've heard of Jesus. He died for us. We have faith. We believe. We know he died. We're all good. They don't really understand. They didn't hear what he had to say. And because of that, their view on the heavenly things is that, God is this wrathful person. He will condemn the evil and wicked. But they don't see themselves as that. So they're not quite in the right line here. They're not wicked, but they're definitely not righteous. They're this it's kind of like this the Laodicean age, neither warm, neither cold. So they're lukewarm, and because of that, he spits them out. So when they pass, because we're all destined to doom, we're all sinners. This transition comes at some point, whether you like it or not. Because of this view, they see themselves as being redeemed just by Christ's death. But that's not why Christ or Yeshua HaMashiach really came. He came to save us, came to redeem us by showing us how to live. It wasn't his will to die, it was his will to show us how to live. But man, being a sinner, decided, hey, we should kill this guy because he's upsetting our system, our polluted way of doing things. So they come across in the sense of this kind of they see themselves as being like Yeshua. I mean, isn't that the whole nonsense of calling yourself a Christian? I mean, there's only one Christ, there's only one Savior, there's only one Yeshua HaMashiach. To call yourself a Christian is kind of like saying you're Christ-like, but I mean, it's kind of a naive notion to consider oneself in that same light. They're two very different things. Yeshua came into this world being perfect already. We are made perfect through Yeshua's words and works if we have the ears to hear and the eyes to see. And then it's a matter of faith. Yes, you have to have the faith, because without it you won't do. And that's the piece a lot of people want to leave off. These are all the people, they had the faith, but they never did. So they really didn't have strong faith. It's not to say they didn't have any faith, but their faith was strong. It failed them because they didn't do. So they come across and they're thinking, hey, I'm all golden. I'm golden like the sun. But it's not the yellow brightness of the sun that you were supposed to see. It was the sun of Elohim, the sun of the Most High, not the golden illuminated sun. I mean, this is they think the head's up here when the head's really up here. So they got it really backwards. So they get spit out too. And that kind of completes the perspectives of Jah's view in judgment, taken from, again, the high priest breastplate, or Harun's breastplate. Now the last perspective, I touched on this a little bit, it'll make a little more sense yet again. There's the three views or choices mankind must and will choose between. Every man, woman, and child whether you like it or not. I mean, you're choosing between it all the time. And those three choices are, you can choose to be righteous and live that way. You can choose to be wicked and live that way. Or you can choose to be evil and godless and live that way. Now, if you look at these in isolation, I mean, if you look at the righteous, if you just saw these lines of gems and you didn't know anything else, and you're told you can select one grouping of gems as your kind of reward, what would you take? Now, without the wisdom of Hamashiach, it might be easy to say, hey, I really like this set. I mean, got some expensive gems that are really precious. This one probably has the most value. It's like, that greed. It's like, so they, the wicked, they take that greed. 3 out of 4 gems that are nice, valuable earth gems, they can deal with the one that's lost. They'll figure out something to do with it. Over here, it's like, these are probably the most appealing to the senses. I mean, nice bright colors, all 4 of them. It seems like the most complete. But, it's kind of looks can be deceiving, right? Not everything that shimmers is gold. And then you have that which is righteous, and I mean, this is you kind of like some of it, you kind of don't. And this is kind of why a lot of people, I think, have a lot of trouble really embracing it. I mean, you got half of it that people was like, they're not bad, but I mean, they're not as nice as all these other gems. And up here you got, well, these are nice precious gems. I really like these. Like, so I have to take this other half? And it's like, yes, you have to take the whole thing. You can't split this pill. So I mean, it really comes down to which pill are you going to choose? Are you greedy for self-gain? Do you think you see everything perfectly yourself? Or do you realize, there's 2 sides to the story? That's going to be it for this video. Really not sure how this turned out. I haven't done a lot of videos, but hope that it made a lot of sense. Write some comments or whatever. Say what you got to. Love to hear some opinions, and hopefully it's kind of an eye-opener for everyone. Oh, one last word. Today is also the 24th of March 2017, and with the readings I do anyways, I always read the corresponding chapter of Proverbs for the day as kind of my noontime reading and feeding for wisdom. And today's chapter is chapter 24. Just want to share a little bit about it. I highly recommend ones go and read it because it has a lot of strong correlations with this, which is the reaffirmation in my view from the Most High, just working through the Spirit and bringing out the truth. It's not too long. I'm just going to read a little bit about it here from Proverbs 24:1 and I think about 17, kind of most of it, I guess. It says, "Be not thou envious against evil men, neither desire to be with them. For their heart studieth destruction, and their lips talk of mischief. Through wisdom is an house builded, and by understanding it is established." So again, just having a quick look at this. This is the first 3 verses. Be not envious against evil men, neither desire to be with them. So this is really saying, don't be with these wicked people. For their heart studieth destruction, and their lips talk of mischief. So I was kind of read this a little bit ago, but essentially, it's kind of just touching on and reiterating on this a bit. And by knowledge shall thy chambers be filled with all pleasant and all precious and pleasant riches. A wise man is strong, yea, a man of knowledge increases strength. For by wise counsel thou shalt make thy war, and in multitude of counselors there is safety. So, you don't want to be with the evil, the wicked that go about flattering with lips, causing mischief. Fill thy chambers with what is precious and pleasant riches. And a wise man A man of knowledge will increase in strength if you're in this standing. Wisdom, true wisdom that you can see from the Most High, is too high for a fool. They can't reach it. And he that devises to do evil should be called a mischievous person. So it's kind of applying to both these those who left and those who think themselves right. The thought of foolishness is sin, and the scorner is an abomination to men. So again, the thought of foolishness is sin. Just turning the pages and steering the mouse. And scorner is an abomination to men. They have all that blood on them. If thou faint in the day of adversity, so it's kind of talking when you pass from the physical, thy strength is small. So they had no real strength. And here they think themselves as gods, but they don't, it's like, who are you going to call on? These people rested on the black stone, the black living rock, If thou forbear to deliver them that are drawn unto death, and those that are ready to be slain, if thou sayest, behold, we knew it not, doth not he that pondereth the heart consider it? And he that keepeth thy soul, doth not he know it? And shall not he render to every man according to his works? So, here he's really just kind of saying is like, if you think you're going to use that as an excuse, he knows what you know, and he judges you fairly still on that. There's no mistake when you get to this point. Everything that's counted up is counted up in equal measure, as seen as in the Most High's view of what is righteous and true. There'll be people complaining and saying this and that, but it won't matter. It'll be too late. So it's like, get yourself in the right standing while you have the chance. And verse 13, my son, eat thou honey, because it is good, and the honeycomb, which is sweet to thy taste. So it's saying, like, when you find that good sweetness, that is truth that is unmistakable, eat it, and don't waste it. Don't forget it. Keep it with you. Eat as much as is satisfying. So shall thy knowledge of wisdom be unto thy soul, when thou hast found it, and there shall be a reward, and thy expectation shall not be cut off. So again, it's really just saying is like, when you find that which is good and pure and true according to the Most High, do not leave it. Take it. It's like, if you turn back from it, you're rejecting the Most High. You're not just rejecting the knowledge, because in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was Jah, and the Word was with Jah. So if you don't receive the wisdom, the instruction, you're not receiving the Word, you're not receiving Jah. They are all one and the same. They're just different ways to look on it and understand, but man is limited in understanding. You need to see it the way Jah sees it. Lay not wait, O wicked man, against the dwelling of the righteous, nor spoil his resting place. So it's talking to these other groups, whether you be evil or godless or wicked. For a just man falleth 7 times and riseth up again. So these people that are seen as righteous, and even Yeshua, they had to fall, 7 times. That's kind of interesting, because it kind of has a good correlation to the 7 spirits of the Most High. They had to see the ebbs and flows to really kind of find their way. We're all learning through life, and sometimes you learn through success, sometimes you learn through failure. And, Jah's plan, as is kind of being revealed more and more, and especially in these days and times, is it was a combination of both that man had to endure to really come to fully understand things properly. But even then, not everyone can do it. It's only a handful of people that are going to be chosen and really set themselves apart. So, for a just man falls 7 times and riseth up again. I mean, there's only one person that's risen up again, and he's the righteous. So, I mean, follow his example, and you can be in this pile too. You can be in this standing. Rejoice not when thine enemy falleth, and let not thine heart be glad when he stumbleth. So, when when the enemy falleth, it's probably the wicked. And let not thine heart be glad when he stumbleth is probably referring to the godless and the evil. I got to read just a little bit more than I thought. Lest Adonai see it and it displease him, and he turn away his wrath from him. So, I mean, God's pretty clear. It's like, yeah, know where you're going, but don't sit there and gloat and be don't lord yourself over someone thinking you're all better than another. He's really being clear. Some people are going to they might find this standing, but then they start seeing themselves as being better than them. And I mean, then you're going against his standing again. So he gives this warning here. And then, fret not thyself because of evil men, neither be thou envious at the wicked. So he's really just saying, do your thing and focus on being upright and just and true in his sight. Just leave these people be. I mean, it's not saying treat them any other way, just don't be with them, Habits have a way of rubbing off on people. For there shall be no reward to the evil man. The candle of the wicked shall be put out. I'm not going to keep going. There's a little bit more. You can kind of read into that. Hopefully you're able to kind of cite that for yourselves and hear that for yourselves. Anyways, God bless all the faithful children that are still keeping the trod and remaining strong. It's really been a opening experience, just kind of these last few months, especially with all the things going on, and Jah just continues to teach through so many different people. I mean, there's no one person that knows everything, and all Jah works matter and add up. So let's keep the faith and keep bringing forward Jah works. Amen.